Buonasera a tutte, buonasera a tutti, benvenuti e benvenute alla seconda puntata della seconda stagione di Too Much Harp Interview. Sono le 21:30 del 3 dicembre 2024. Come avete visto, l'ospite di questa sera è un nome molto pesante del mondo dell'armonica, ma proviamo ad andare avanti facendo finta che nessuno sappia di cosa si sta parlando. Davide, vogliamo ringraziare nuovamente l'ospite della scorsa puntata?
Assolutamente sì, ringraziamo Victor Puertas che ci ha contattato dalla Spagna, è stata una bellissima intervista, una bella prima puntata della seconda stagione che ci ha dato tanto e ci siamo molto divertiti ed emozionati. Io direi, Angelo, ringraziamo anche lo staff del Too Much Harp, Laura
Giusto.
Meff che ci dà una mano su tutte le grafiche, molto preziosa, e poi tutti i nostri amici e collaboratori che ci danno una mano a fare un po' di pubblicità e che ci sostengono. C'è da dire che oggi l'ospite è veramente importante, è veramente grosso. Io so che in Italia conosco tanti armonicisti blues che amano alla follia questo grande uomo di blues, questo grande armonicista, veramente lo amano tanto. Sui post su Facebook hanno messo le copertine dei dischi di questo artista. E ragazzi, non perdiamoci in chiacchiere. Io direi che
allora, io dico soltanto che in giugno di quest'anno ho avuto la fortuna di vederlo dal vivo a Roma, di farci una bellissima chiacchierata, e qualche giorno dopo questo grandissimo armonicista ha deciso di venire a Firenze e venirci a trovare l'unico locale, secondo me, che continua a fare musica dal vivo per davvero in questa città, volendo partecipare. Cioè, uno come questo ha partecipato a una jam session, vabbè, lasciamo perdere. E la cosa devastante per me è stata dover suonare prima di lui, è stato molto imbarazzante.
No, dai, non dire così.
Suonare con i suoi occhi puntati non è bellissimo, e la cosa fantastica è che il mostro in questione aveva con sé una sola armonica in tonalità di La e ha suonato un brano in prima, uno in seconda, uno in terza, lasciando tutti a bocca aperta, me compreso, che quella sera decisi, vista la vicinanza del fiume Arno, di buttare tutte le mie armoniche in quel magnifico fiume. L'utilità era quella. Ciancio alle bande e bando alle ciance. Ladies and gentlemen, questa sera è qui con noi il fantastico, inimitabile Mark Hummel. Good evening, Mark. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, fellas.
We are broadcasting from Italy, and we are very happy to have you here. The first question, as usual, is, how are you today?
I'm good. I just have an itchy nose. Keep sneezing. Hopefully I won't sneeze.
Maybe it's the cat.
It might be the cat. Maybe I'm allergic to him.
We know that you are planning something beautiful in February. You know, if we would like to talk just a little bit.
Yes, I am. I'm doing my 33rd. I think it's either the 33rd or the 34th blues harmonica blowout. I think it's the 33rd. Blues harmonica blowout, and that's going to be all up and down the West Coast, all the way from almost San Diego up to Seattle, actually past Seattle.
Which guest you will have?
I've got Curtis Salgado on the bill, Nick Moss, Dennis Grundling, myself, and from Spain, Sweet Marta. And then I've got a great
now.
Yeah, I've got a great band too. I've got Wes Starr on drums and Bob Welsh on keyboard and guitar, and Rodrigo Montavani on upright bass.
You gonna record something or no?
I don't know. I mean, you know, usually some of the certain gigs will record the gig. I mean, I've yet to put out in the last, say, almost 10 years, I've yet to put out a CD of the blowout. I think the last one I did was 2012 when I did the harmonica, the tribute to Little Walter. Remembering Little Walter, yeah.
I know every seconds of this this disc.
Good.
I listen like every day for 3 months. Just this
Wow.
for 3 months. Yeah.
You do know
My
it, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, my girlfriend hates me for this.
I bet. Yeah. That's one way to get them to hate you.
I'm going to translate to our audience. Allora, abbiamo chiesto a Mark del suo progetto imminente, che è il 33esimo Harmonica Blowout, che avverrà a febbraio con una line-up chiaramente incredibile. Ci sarà Curtis Salgado, ci sarà ovviamente Mark, ci sarà Dennis Grueling dalla Spagna, ci sarà Sweet Marta, che non diciamo niente, potremmo incontrare su questi schermi, con una band incredibile, e stiamo cercando di capire se magari ci sarà un disco di questo blowout, visto che l'ultimo blowout registrato è stato nel 2012. So, Mark, if you want, we can start with our question.
Sure.
Are you okay with it?
Yeah, I'm fine.
So, Davide, we read the question in Italian, then I will translate for you, and we're going to talk about it.
Okay.
Ok, Mark, sei uno dei più grandi armonicisti in circolazione. Sei uno dei più grandi armonicisti in circolazione. E infatti sei grande storia di questo strumento. Ci piacerebbe che raccontassi della tua storia, di come ti sei formato artisticamente, di quali sono stati i tuoi mentori. Inoltre vorremmo capire com'era il fermento a Los Angeles negli anni della tua formazione. Come parlavate di armonica tu, William Clark, Rod Piazza, su cosa vi confrontavate e che scena c'era in quegli anni, e cosa molto importante, qual è l'eredità artistica che è stata lasciata.
So, the first question is, Mark, you are one of the greatest harmonica player around, and in fact, you are part of the history of this instrument. We would like to tell us about your story, how you developed artistically, who your mentor were. We would also like to understand what the excitement was like in Los Angeles in your formative year. How did you talk about harmonica with other harmonica players such as William Clark and Rod Piazza? What you discuss about, what scene was there in those years, and what is the artistic legacy that was left today?
Well, the way I got into it was I was a teenager. I was around 15 years old, and I pretty much got into blues from the blues rock door. I was into all the hippie bands. Like I said in the interview when I wrote you back, I wanted anything that would drive my parents out of the room. So I was picking the loudest rock blues stuff I could listen to, Blue Cheer and Big Brother and the Holding Company and Cream, Jimi Hendrix, Jefferson Airplane, any of that stuff I would listen to. And what caught my ear was that there were certain songs that seemed like I liked more than others, and a lot of times they were the blues rock songs. So if I heard something like, by Blue Cheer doing a version of a song called The Hunter, I found out later was an Albert King song. I found Spoonful was a Howlin' Wolf song, or Rollin' and a Tumblin' was a Muddy Waters song, things like that. And then so through the rock groups, I eventually found out about Willie Dixon, Howlin' Wolf, and Muddy Waters, because I kept seeing their names on those rock records. As Muddy Waters was McKinley Morganfield, Howlin' Wolf was Chester Burnett, and Willie Dixon was Willie Dixon. But that was how I found out about the older guys. And when I first heard the older guys, I said to myself, these guys must be millionaires because their music is so much better than the rock guys. And that was really how I got into it.
Ok, allora Mark ha cominciato a inserirsi nel mondo musicale molto presto, già a 15 anni praticamente, e le prime cose, i primi dischi che ascoltava erano quelli che non piacevano, tra virgolette, ai genitori, quindi Jefferson Airplane, Jimi Hendrix, i Cream, quindi tutto rock blues molto molto spinto. Però a un certo punto si è reso conto che c'erano alcune canzoni che gli piacevano più delle altre, e poco a poco scopre che queste canzoni erano di nomi che all'epoca ancora non conosceva, come Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Willie Dixon, e in questo modo ha scoperto i veri nomi, quindi Chester Barnett, nel caso di Howlin' Wolf, McKinley Morganfield, Muddy Waters, e ha pensato: queste persone devono essere milionarie, visto e considerato che la musica che loro fanno è molto più bella del rock blues, quindi è approdato in questo modo all'ascolto del blues.
So to continue, what happened was through those guys like, you know, Howlin' Wolf and Willie Dixon and Muddy, I started hearing the harmonica players like Big Walter Horton and Little Walter, who played, you know, on a bunch of the Muddy Waters records. I heard somebody turn me onto a James Cotton record really early on when I was 15. Somebody lent me a Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry album that I still have to this day. And I just became really consumed with blues. All I wanted to hear was blues, and I really didn't, kind of stopped listening to the rock guys within a year or two. I didn't, you know, I mean, I would listen to it when I was in high school because everyone else was listening to it. So, you know, there people were listening to it at parties or whatever. They were listening to rock music. So I actually just found all these bands too that had harmonica players in them, like Lee Oskar was playing with War, and they were on the radio all the time. Jay Giles' band had Magic Dick, who were on the radio all the time, and then, but I think hearing Paul Butterfield, hearing Charlie Musselwhite, hearing James Cotton, I went and saw, you know, Brownie and Sonny were the very first, you know, African American blues artists that I saw, and then I saw Charlie, I think I saw James Cotton right after that, and then I saw Charlie Musselwhite right after that. So that was within maybe a 6-month period of time that I heard those acts, and I saw them all at the same club. There was a bar, it was a coffee house called the Ash Grove, and that was where I heard all three of those acts. And my mother would take me, she would drop me off, and then she would pick me up. So, you know, she kind of became familiar with, that's how she found out about Charlie Musselwhite, and you know, she became a big fan of Charlie's. Pretty
He's
much
such a good guy.
Yeah, she thought he was wonderful, but James Cotton really had the biggest effect on me of those three. And I was really fortunate because I got to work with Brownie McGee, I got to work with Charlie, and I got to work with James Cotton. So later on, I got to work with all these guys quite a bit. And that's kind of a thrill to, you know, or for that matter, Magic Dick and Lee Oskar as well. I got to hear, you know, I got to work with those guys a bunch.
When you saw for the first time an harmonica player playing live, you already playing harmonica, or you decide to play harmonica?
Well,
after?
actually, the very first guy I saw, I was not playing harmonica, and that was Junior Wells. I saw in 1968. And I was only about maybe 12 or 13, and I hadn't started playing yet. And I saw him with Buddy Guy, and they were really they were kind of doing almost more of a James Brown kind of deal. They weren't really playing as much blues. So the harmonica didn't stand out to me because I don't think he played very much of it that day. But but I remember they wore, you know, sequin suits and, you know, like not sequin, I mean, you know, real flashy kind of sharkskin suits and stuff like that.
The shiny one.
Shiny, and he had the horns, and And at the time, I really wasn't a big fan of saxophone in blues. So I went and saw guys like B.B. King or Junior Wells and Buddy Guy, and because they had saxophones, I wasn't as interested. I liked the guys that had slide guitar and piano or whatever.
Old school stuff.
More Muddy Waters and Jimmy Rogers, and those were the guys, and I saw them early on too. So,
Yeah.
But then, there were some people I liked. I saw Bobby Bland, and I thought he was the bomb, And he
Bobby. Yeah, it's wonderful.
And I liked B.B. King. It was a little too showbiz for me at the time. Now Now I love all of that stuff. I'm a huge B.B. King fan now.
The taste music change with years and years.
Right, exactly.
Ok, allora, la storia è molto bella questa. Il primo armonicista che ha visto dal vivo Mark Hummel è stato Junior Wells, quando aveva circa 12 anni, ed è stato dopo quel concerto che ha cominciato a interessarsi all'armonica e a suonare l'armonica. Ed è molto bella la storia che quando lui, a parte un ragazzino di 12 anni che va a sentire nei locali il blues, fosse tutti così sarebbe meraviglioso, vero Davide?
Tanta roba,
Tanta roba. E ha visto dal vivo Charlie Musselwhite, James Cotton, ha visto Sonny Terry e Brownie McGhee, ed dice è stato molto fortunato perché nel corso della sua carriera ha avuto la possibilità di lavorare con questi armonicisti, e poi comunque c'erano diverse band che ascoltava, come per esempio i War, che avevano l'armonica. Per esempio nei War c'era Magic Dick. Insomma, c'è tanto fermento, tanto movimento in quegli anni per Mark Hummel, che va in giro accompagnato dalla madre. Questa è una cosa bellissima. La madre lo portava ai concerti a sentire il blues, e tra l'altro ci tiene a dirci che aveva un debole per Charlie Musselwhite, nel senso che lo apprezzava molto come armonicista, quindi c'è proprio una questione familiare dietro. Questo è un po' il percorso che porta Mark Hummel a essere appunto l'armonicista che è oggi. And how about the period the period of your, when you enter in, let me know, the showbiz, when you start playing professionally, and you talk about how the harmonica player was, because here in Italy we are not so much, and we don't have much the possibility to talk about each other about harmonica in gigs or similar things. We think that for you was different. You go in club, you meet other harmonica player and talk about harmonica. It's just a story that we dream about.
Right. Well, back in those days, I pretty much went and saw every harmonica player I could go see. So, I'd go see, if Rod Piazza was playing or Al Blake was playing or George Smith was playing, anybody. Back when I was living in Los Angeles, there were just not that many shows to go to, but I made sure I tried to get to every one. So, I saw Paul Butterfield at the Troubadour. I saw Rod Piazza and Albert King together at the San Gabriel Civic, or I can't remember if I saw Hollywood Fats. I don't think I saw Hollywood Fats in his band. I saw him backing up people. So like he would be on shows like, if it was like, say, Big Joe Turner and Pee Wee Creighton and Queenhead Vincent, it would be a lot of times it would be Fats on guitar. I saw Fats backing up Jimmy Witherspoon. I think I saw Robin Ford backing up Jimmy Witherspoon the first time I saw him. So, I would go see anything that was blues. That was really it, because I would go see Bobby Bland, who didn't have a harmonica player. I would go see B.B. King, who didn't have a harmonica player. I remember I first saw James Harmon in a band he had called the Ice House Blues Band. And that had to be like 1973, something like that, 72. And they were on a show, a double bill with this rock band called Bertha. And at the time it was James Harmon and Buddy Reed, who was the guitar player that used to be on Bacon Fat.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I mean, I saw anyone I could go see, I would go see. I was not, however, there was a guy named Zaven Zambazian, and he was playing with a guy named, I want to say Johnny Turner, I think was the name of the guitar player. And they had Al Duncan on drums. And I remember going to that show. So I went to pretty much every show that had a harmonica, practically.
Every show.
Excuse me?
And how, just a question, there is my curiosity. How do you talk each other about harmonica? You spoke about, you know, lick, position, microphone, amplifier, all this kind of stuff?
I would ask every harmonica player everything I could. I'd ask them about the mic, about the amplifier, about whether they were tongue blocking or lipping. I mean, usually I could tell that by watching them or listening to them. But you know, I would definitely ask about positions, things like, you know, first, second, and third positions. You know, I was a young kid, so I would go up and just, you know, I talked to James Cotton the first time I saw him. I didn't have any qualms about going up to any harmonica player and talking to them. So, you know, Cotton was very approachable. He was really nice about talking to young people. So, you know, I think I walked up to Cotton and I said, you know, I was like 15. I walked up and I said something like, "So, James, what are your favorite albums?" And he said something like, "I like them all." And I said, "Not me. I like the first two the best," or something. You know, I mean, I would just stick my foot in my mouth, you know. And then I said, so like, "What do you think of Paul Butterfield?" And he said, "Paul's my friend." And I said, "I like you better," or something like that. So, you know, he was really nice to me, and he didn't have any problem, you know, just putting up with me, being patient.
You were my James Cotton, because I remember in Florence, I asked you a lot of stuff about harmonica, and you were very kind to me and answered to every my question. So, you know, generation change, and
Right.
now you are our James Cotton, because we ask you
that's very
things about
kind of you,
harmonica.
because Cotton was really my idol. I mean, he was somebody, when I first started using him on shows, I want to say the first show I booked him on was in 2021. So 2001. So that was 23 years ago.
Yep.
And I had him on those blowout tours, and he played at least 5 or 6 of those blowout tours. So I got to be around him quite a bit. And he was always a very easygoing guy to be around. And, you know, I would get up there and sing, because by that time he wasn't singing anymore. So I would sing the songs. And, you know, he would just say, "Call them as you want," because he knew every damn song in the book. You know, he knew every song. He knew every Little Walter song, every Muddy Waters song, every Jimmy Rogers song. He knew all those songs, every Sonny Boy song. So I could pick any song I wanted and he would play it.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Allora, un giovane Mark Hummel va in giro a vedere tutti i concerti. Dovremmo farlo un po' tutti, vero Davide? E come,
Sì.
come si approcciava ai grandi armonicisti che andava a vedere, tipo appunto James Cotton, di cui stiamo parlando in questo momento, come fondamentalmente abbiamo fatto tutti, come io ho fatto con Mark a giugno, chiedendogli un sacco di cose sull'armonica, avendocelo davanti, come ho fatto anche con Musselwhite nel 2013. Ragazzi, io ho rotto le scatole a tutte e due e gli ho chiesto delle cose. Tu non l'avresti fatto, Davide?
Sì, assolutamente sì, sì, sì. Poi in particolare quando sei giovane.
E raccontò di questo momento molto esilarante nel quale si è trovato a parlare con James Cotton, che è stato con lui sempre molto, molto gentile anche quando era giovane. Gli ha chiesto, Mark chiede a Cotton quale fosse il suo disco preferito, e Cotton ha risposto tutti. "No, mi piacciono i primi due", e alla fine è stato molto bello, dice appunto Mark, il fatto di poter passare dall'essere il ragazzino che chiedeva le cose a James Cotton ad essere l'organizzatore del Blowout, dove Cotton ha suonato per diverse edizioni, e io ho detto, per te, cioè, Cotton è stato il tuo mentore, tu sei diventato il mio James Cotton, perché io a te ho chiesto le cose. Dice, suonare con Cotton, lavorare con lui è stato bellissimo, perché non era necessario che studiasse nulla, sapeva tutti i pezzi di Muddy Waters, tutti i pezzi di Little Walter, tutti i pezzi di Jim Witherspoon, li conosceva tutti a memoria, quindi bastava tirare il titolo di una canzone e Cotton sapeva tutto. Quindi giustamente quando ti trovi nella possibilità di lavorare, di studiare con certi armonicisti, è chiaro che poi insomma le cose diventano un pochettino più importanti. Davide, io a questo punto capito, io direi che abbiamo fatto una bellissima panoramica di tutto il momento iniziale della carriera di Mark Hummel. Sarebbe interessante andare nella seconda domanda, entrare un pochettino più nello specifico di tutte le tantissime attività che fa Hummel legate all'armonica e alla musica in generale.
Allora, la seconda domanda proprio parla di questo aspetto del nostro Mark Hummel, che è un artista veramente a 360 gradi, attenzione. Allora, seconda domanda, non solo tantissimi concerti, ma anche tanti dischi. Cosa ci puoi dire del tuo ultimo album? Com'è scrivere un disco blues come True Believer nel 2024? Nel 2012 hai anche scritto un libro biografico molto interessante e a tratti divertente, che si chiama Big Road Blues. E di recente hai iniziato con il podcast Mark Hummel's Harmonica Party. E poi come si affianca la vita del musicista quella di podcaster e scrittore. Quanto ti diverti a fare tutte queste cose?
Okay, time for the second question. I'm gonna take it on my laptop. So, not only many concerts, but also many records. What can you tell us about the last album? What is like writing a blues record like True Believer that is out in 2024? In 2010, I make a mistake when I wrote the question. You also wrote a very interesting book at the time, funny and biological, Big Road Blues, 12 bar on I-80. And recently started the podcast Mark Hummel's Harmonica Party. How does the life of a musician combine with that of podcaster and writer? How much you have fun doing all these things?
Oh, I love it. I love doing. I love kind of keeping myself busy. I mean, that's a lot of it. I mean, I'm very busy with the music thing, with booking jobs and putting together bands and things like that. But you know, when you're on the road and even sometimes when you're home, you want to kind of find other things to kind of occupy your time, so you don't get just too stressed out about bookings and musicians and all that stuff. So I think the way I got into the book was that I was touring in Europe, and we were on a particularly grueling part of a European tour. The guy that was our promoter didn't really know anything about how to put a tour together. And so it was kind of a nightmare. And so I was writing stuff down, and I think I sent a guy.
I remember the chapter where you talk about it.
It's Vulture. Yeah, Vulture. But, you know, what happened was I think I wrote a bunch of stuff down, and then I sent it to the guy that was putting out my albums, the guy at Mountaintop, this guy, Charles Puttress. So I sent him those, and he goes, "This would make a great book." And I was like, you know, yeah. He goes, "Well, I'll make a movie about it if you write the book." and I'll get Brad Pitt to play you. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. Okay, sure you will. But anyway, he he insisted I try to write this book. And so that's kind of how it came about. And it took me about 3 years to do it. I want to say I started it in either 2007 or 2008, and then I was done with it by 2010. But what I did is I pretty much wrote parts of it, and then I also tape recorded parts and had my bass player's wife, Beth Grigsby, she transcribed the parts that I taped. So I would tell a story and then she would write it out, you know, in on a computer, and then I would just edit, and that's how I wrote it. Was I edited the hell out of everything that was transcribed, and just tried to pack it, you know, writing wise, so it made sense, because it wasn't very good at first, and I kept working on it. That's really what writing a book is about, editing, and the more you write, the better you get at editing. And you want it to read easily. You want it to read in a way that keeps people's attention, and that's really what I had to do. So believe it or not, I've actually started a new book because I had another adventure in Denmark. So I'm working on new chapters now. I've got 3 right now.
Perfect. We are very curious. You know, this was a gift from my former band, from the guys from my former band when I graduate first time.
Right.
So I'm very emotional with this book because it gives me a good memory, and also is very interesting and fun, because when you tour, like you, me, and Davide, you know, we know what we are talking about, because you know, you live a very strange adventure. But you were the first that write everything down.
Well, you know, what I found, and I found this both writing my own book and doing the podcast, is musicians have great stories. Anyone that's been on the road for a long time, if they've been on the road for, you know, 10 to 30, 40 years, they got great stories, because you can't help but collect these stories from the weird stuff that happens, you know, when it comes to living your life in a van or a bus or on stage. You know, you're going to meet all these strange people, and you're going to meet some people that are great and some people that are disasters. So,
and you don't know where you have to go to eat.
And you never know where you're going to eat. You never know what kind of weather you're going to get into. You never know if the van's going to hold up, or if you're going to get paid at the end of the gig. And so, you know, you don't know if your band members are going to jump ship. You just don't know. It's a very weird way to live your life.
Yes, it is. Allora, I'm going to translate.
Yeah.
Allora, se non lo avete fatto, comprate questo libro magnifico, lo trovate su Amazon, è bellissimo, perché in questo libro spettacolare Mark ci racconta, che ha cominciato a scrivere nel 2007-2008 e che è uscito nel 2010, ci racconta, partendo da una disavventura avuta in un tour in Europa, organizzato da uno che probabilmente avrebbe dovuto fare un altro lavoro, comincia a scrivere la sua vita in tour, quello che succede quando giri l'Europa o gli Stati Uniti con un furgone andando a suonare ovunque. E Davide, lo sappiamo, può succedere in tour veramente qualsiasi cosa, dall'impianto del locale che non funziona, al furgone che si rompe,
i matti del paese.
I matti, cioè veramente, e qui dentro c'è tutto, ci sono delle storie esilaranti, e lui ha avuto una grandissima mano nello scrivere questo libro, scusatemi, tante cose addirittura le ha registrate e poi le ha sbobinate, e giustamente ci dice, tra lo scrivere il libro e l'esperienza di podcast, si è reso conto che i musicisti hanno un sacco di storie da raccontare, ed è molto bello. Sono tutte cose che succedono quando vivi per strada, e comunque scegliere di vivere in questo modo è molto particolare perché può succedere veramente qualsiasi cosa, e tutte le cose che possono succedere durante un tour qua dentro sono scritte e vi consigliamo di leggerlo. How about your last album? Because I know the question, I know the answer, and it was very fun.
The last album, the True Believer album, was started in 2023. I think we did the Junior Watson sessions, which it's really two halves. We had one session in July and we had one session in October. And the July session was the Junior Watson session with Kato Roy on bass, Wes Starr on drums. Wes is actually on both sessions. And then a guy named Brent Bronstadt played piano. There's a guy named Jack Sanford that played horn on some cuts. And then the October session was Wes Starr on drums again, Billy Flynn on guitar, Bob Welsh on keyboard and guitar, and Randy Bermudez on bass. And then I brought in two of the guys we were on tour with to sing a couple songs. Joe Beard sings the last song, Shuffling Days, and Oscar Wilson sings the first song, High Time for the Devil. And we just played with Oscar this last weekend. I had Oscar and Junior Watson and Anson Funderburg and Diana Greenleaf, Wes Starr, Kato Roy, and Bob on one of the two dates that we just did last weekend. So that was kind of an album, sort of an album release, somewhat.
Oh, okay.
But what I was doing on that album was I was really putting together a combination of, I want to say about half of the songs were covers by other people, like Elvin Bishop wrote What the Hell, Otis Rush wrote Double Trouble, B.B. King wrote Breaking My Heart, Peter Green wrote Stop Messing Around, Little Walters, a couple Little Walters songs, Who and The Toddle, and those are both in there. And then the rest are originals that either I wrote or my old bass player RW wrote. Shuffling Days, me and RW worked on one called Headed for a Heartache. I wrote one called Ghosted. I wrote one called and RW and I wrote Jackknife together. And then one I wrote called Little Electric Car. So those are the originals that are on it. Yeah, I'm real happy with the way it came out. I mean, it's been really getting good attention on the radio. They actually added one of the songs to XM Sirius is added Jackknife to the Bluesville channel, and it's done really well on the Living Blues charts. It's been like between number 2 and number 4 for the last 4 months, so that's nice. And getting a lot of blues and roots and stuff like that. So people seem to be still playing it, so that's great because it came out in May.
And you on the what you answer on the mail. You wrote me that you wanted to put the City House before election.
Oh yes, I did. I mean, two of the songs on it I really wanted to release before the election. One is the Elvin Bishop song, What the Hell, and the other was one I wrote called High Time for the Devil that I wrote with, I forgot about that one. That's one I wrote with my friend Phil Marsh. And I had Oscar sing it, and I really wanted that. That's actually the album kickoff is High Time for the Devil, and you know, it's more relevant now than it's ever been. So
okay, I translate for everybody.
Okay.
Ci sei, Angelo? Angelo?
Sì, scusate, aveva internet. Eccomi, ci sono.
Sì, stavo traducendo un po' quello che ha detto Mark, ha detto che il disco del 2023 è stato un disco con un'ottima band e hanno fatto 2 sessioni, una in giugno e una in ottobre, con una buona
Mi
parte
senti,
della
Davide?
band.
Ci siamo tutti? Rispondetemi per favore.
Sì, sì, sì. Sì, sì, ci siamo tutti. Tu ci sei?
Io ci sono, mi sentite? Are you hearing me? Am I everything okay? Perfect.
Ok.
Okay, sorry. I have issues with internet. I don't know why.
E stavo dicendo che hanno registrato questo bellissimo
Sorry
disco.
about that. We would like to continue with the third question at this time.
Ok? Vado.
Vai Davide, leggi pure la terza domanda.
Allora, il tuo stile è unico e inconfondibile. Sei fonte di ispirazione per tanti armonicisti. Suonando l'armonica hai girato il mondo, per questo vorremmo sapere se secondo te ci sia una differenza stilistica tra armonicisti di altre zone del mondo e quelli appunto statunitensi. Vedi per esempio noi europei.
Okay, your style is unique and unmistakable. You are a source of inspiration for many harmonica players. You have toured the world playing the harmonica. For this reason, we would like to know if your opinion, there is a stylistic difference between harmonica player from other areas of the world. See, for example, in Europe.
I would say there is and there isn't. That's kind of a hard question to answer, only because in a way, harmonica is learned nowadays by listening to old recordings, or I mean, that's how I learned it. I learned it from listening to Little Walter records or Sonny Boy Williamson records or Junior Wells or Big Walter or James Cotton or George Harmonica Smith. I listened to so many different people, and I really didn't. I can't say I didn't have a favorite. I kind of did have favorites, but I really listened to everything pretty equally. There were a lot of more obscure guys I listened to as well. I listened to Snooky Pryor and Jerry McCain and Junior Parker. I mean, I wouldn't call those guys obscure, but I would say they're not on the, they weren't in the same, people wouldn't mention their names as much as they would Little Walter or Sonny Boy. So I listened to both Sonny Boys big time. I listened to Sonny Boy 1, John Lee Williamson as well quite a bit. But there were all these guys. Sam Myers is another one I listened to heavily. God, there's, Buster Brown. I mean, there's so many guys that I listened to. Who's another one? Oh, God. The guy from Natchez, Mississippi. Papa Lightfoot. He's another one.
Okay.
There's a lot of guys, that were out there. George Mayweather, Lester Davenport. I listened to everybody. I really didn't. There was nobody I really, didn't listen to some kind of degree. So, but I also listened to, guys that were maybe a little older than me. I mean, I did, when I started, I listened to Rod Piazza. I listened to, Paul Butterfield, Charlie Musselwhite, Magic Dick, Lee Oscar, Charlie McCoy. Even I listened to, who was not really a blues player, Toots Thielmans, anybody that played harmonica, I listened to. But I think as I got into it heavier, I kind of narrowed it down to really the black blues players, and I, you know, I mean, I listened to guys like D. Ford Bailey during the pandemic really heavily because I thought I've never really learned how to play like D. Ford. I've never learned to play like Sonny Terry. So I kind of learned their styles during the COVID, you know, because I thought I need to learn it. It's just something I want to do. And so I learned how to play a little bit of that. You know, in other words, I really wanted to have a well-rounded kind of palette of what I play. I also play a lot of chromatic, and I played chromatic as soon as I heard both Lil Walter and George Smith. I started working on some chromatic stuff. And I mean, you know, I got into it enough that I actually learned some Stevie Wonder stuff as a teenager. I mean, I learned, you know, the solo to Once in My Life, you know, things like that, because I wanted to be able to play chromatic well. And I mean, right now my chromatic playing is, you know, I'd say it's a little bit stuck. I mean, I play first, second, and third primarily on chromatic, you know. And, you know, I play with the button in say, E flat or A flat, things like that. But, you know, keys like F, I don't play that well in F. You know, certain other keys, E, I really don't know how to play in much. So, you know, but I learned a lot of position stuff on the regular harp too. I learned how to play in fourth and fifth positions on the regular harp. And I did that primarily because I got into some of the pre-war guys like Jazz Gillum or Rhythm Willie, and I wanted to learn how to play like them, to be able to blow bend, you know, while you're tongue blocking like Jazz Gillum did. That took some doing, and I remember I put on a blowout with Lil Charlie and Rick Estrin and Steve Geiger, and I think I had Billy Boy on that too. And we did nothing but Bluebird stuff. And by doing that, I wanted to do some Jazz Gillum songs. So both me and Rick Estrin kind of learned to do that blow bending stuff with tongue blocking around 2015 when I did that. So that was, you know, I mean, I've always kind of found new things that I wanted to try to learn.
There is someone that surprised you in those days on new harmonica player on the scene.
I'm not sure who you mean.
There is some harmonica player in those days that, like, you know, when you listen to him or her, you say, "Wow, never heard her sing before."
Well, I'd heard guys like Rhythm Willie and Jazz Gillum, but I'd never tried to play their stuff. So once you try to copy somebody, it's kind of like you find out that it might be more difficult than you thought it was, or you might hear it differently than you did originally. Because originally I thought Jazz Gillum was a very kind of sloppy, you know, player, but then I started really listening to it and trying to play it, and I realized, man, he's really hard to play like. And same with Sonny Boy One. Sonny Boy One is somebody that a lot of people hear Sonny Boy One and they think, well, it's not very, you know, it's not very concise, it's not very detailed. But then you try to play it and you realize it's really, really hard to play like that. And so,
really hard to play Sonny Boy.
A lot of the older players just really got me playing and thinking differently about their playing.
And you're a study every day.
I wouldn't say every day, but I'd say that, you know, during the pandemic, I was playing a lot. When the pandemic hit, because there were no gigs, I started to play a lot because I wanted to just put my time into learning stuff in a new way. And so I did, you know, learn things like Sonny Terry. Sonny Terry's completely different than everybody else. His playing is it's a whole different level of playing. His timing is almost like 1 and 3 instead of 2 and 4. It's a completely different way of playing and a completely different rhythm. His rhythmic sense is, there's nobody that can touch him rhythmically, you know.
Yes.
You listen to all the different
Durante-
versions he did of. You listen to all the different versions he did of something like Lost John, and you realize he was like just always improvising what he played. He never played the same thing twice.
Always.
A lot like Little Walter in that sense, but Little Walter and Sonny Terry didn't think much of each other. Little Walter was not a fan of Sonny Terry's.
Really?
No, at least according to Brownie, yeah. Yeah. Because I worked with Brownie a lot, and Brownie told me he said, Sonny Terry, yeah, he wasn't nothing, you know.
Allora, I have to translate because it's too much fun. Allora, scopriamo gli altarini. Allora, Mark ha avuto...
Dei re del blues, dei re del blues.
Dei re del blues, scopriamo veramente gli altarini. Queste sono le storie che ci piacciono di più. Allora, Mark ha avuto la possibilità di lavorare per diverso tempo con Brownie McGhee, storico chitarrista di Sonny Terry, ovviamente. E ora andremo nello specifico sugli stili di cui ha parlato Mark, ma veniamo a scoprire questa sera, vediamocelo Davide perché è importante, sembra che Sonny Terry e Little Walter non andassero molto d'accordo, non si rispettassero più di tanto l'uno con l'altro, diciamo, non avevano una buona idea l'uno dell'altro.
Vabbè.
Ci sta, ci può stare. Anche io non penso cose belle di Davide Speranza, lui probabilmente è uguale di me. Però è stato molto, è molto interessante perché durante la pandemia, quindi quel fantastico 2020 nel quale nessuno di noi è andato in giro a suonare, Mark si è concentrato molto sullo strumento, sulla cromatica, sulla diatonica, andando a riascoltare tutto, ha studiato molto e ci tiene molto a sottolineare quanto sia importante l'andare ad ascoltare nello specifico tanti armonicisti, e poi ci si rende conto come, per esempio, consideriamo Jazz Gillum un armonicista non precisissimo, poi lo andiamo ad ascoltare per davvero e le cose cambiano.
Ma infatti, ma dove? Di una precisione gigantesca, Jazz Gillum.
Come anche,
assolutamente,
per esempio, ascoltiamo Sonny Boy Williamson primo, diciamo vabbè, non è difficilissimo, invece andare ad arrivare a quel livello lì di bellezza, di creatività, anche perché comunque in quei periodi non c'era moltissimo, quindi stavano veramente inventando il nuovo modo di suonare l'armonica, così come Sonny Terry. Vabbè, Sonny Terry è in un pezzo del mio cuore, c'ha una stanza apposta, il senso ritmico di Sonny Terry, che a volte andava a suonare sul 2 e sul 4, sull'1 e sul 3, si spostava, cioè, quindi Mark dice, ascoltando tutta questa roba e studiandola per davvero, riusciamo ad avere questo modo, questa possibilità di suonare a questi livelli, capito? Cioè,
ma secondo me è stato anche molto utile il fatto che ha preso come esempio Jazz Gillum, che comunque era molto preciso, anche perché poi lui non era proprio un blues canonico, lui già arrivava anche un po' più dal ragtime, questi tipi di canzoni, come che Rhythm Willie era spettacolare. Concordo pienamente col fatto che quando ascolti Rhythm Willie se rimani colpito da un'armonica deflagrante. Si parla che erano gli anni 20, anni 30, forse qualche registrazione è andata sugli anni 40, ma so che anche Little Walter diceva di Rhythm Willie che era un armonicista spaziale. E parliamo di gente che in linea di massima suonava in prima posizione, ma aveva una tecnica gigantesca. Quindi poi dopo si è evoluta questa tecnica. Appunto in Chicago c'è stata un'evoluzione stilistica e di linguaggio grazie a Sonny Boy Williamson, come ha detto lui prima. Ma il concetto è proprio quello, cercare di prendere tutto quello che è stato fatto da questi grandi artisti e goderne tanto di questa arte, e se si può anche imparare qualcosa. Quindi sono molto contento, è una risposta veramente, una grande lezione di vita questa risposta.
So Mark, you don't find difference in European way of playing the blues or American? Yeah.
Well, I think it's more of a generational difference, is what I think. I think in a lot of ways, what's happened is, because harmonica is so studied now, that the way we played when I was growing up was you had to learn everything off of records, and you had to learn it, without any kind of real education. There was one book out, and the only book out was a book called Tony Glover's Blues Harp.
Yeah.
That was the only instructional thing out there. That was it. And half of it was wrong, if not more than that. I mean, it had the wrong keys. It had all kinds of bad information in it, but it had great photographs. And it told little funny stories about each guy in the book, about little Walter, Sonny Boy, both Sonny Boys, there's a great picture of James Cotton in it. I remember I even drew a picture of the James Cotton photo in there. And, so it was like, everyone had that book, but nobody could learn anything from it because the information was so screwed up. So what I would do is I would literally take the records. I would buy, little Walter records or James Cotton records, and I would slow them down. And if it was a 33 and a third record player, I'd slow it down to 16. And it was the same thing that you have now with these things called the amazing slow downer.
Yes.
Where you can set it. You can slow down the lick in the same key, but see, back then it slowed it down 2 octaves below. So it was really hard to hear it compared to what the amazing slow downer will do. So that was literally how I learned to play almost all the little Walter licks, or, big Walter licks that I learned back then was off of mainly little Walter records were the ones I used, slowed them down. Everything else I just listened to constantly. I was always listening to blues and always listening to harmonica blues. And I just, I got it in my head. So, I mean, to this day, I can remember most of the licks that I learned as a teenager. If you asked me to play a solo off of such and such a song, chances are I can remember it,
Yes.
And that was because I would literally go to sleep with a little Walter record on my turntable. And I would go to bed at night as a teenager, and I would let it play until 4 a.m, and then I would finally take the spindle off, take the needle off the record. But I was listening to those records in my sleep, forever. And I don't
Speaking of new technology,
I don't think most harmonica players today do that, but I can't swear to that. I mean, maybe they do, but I hear a lot more harmonica players nowadays kind of listening to, studying, say, William Clark or Rod Piazza or Kim Wilson, or, maybe they're listening to me, Rick Estrin, whoever it is they're listening to, they're not diving in as deep as most of us did back in the day, because back in the day, all of us could go see Big Walter. You could go see James Cotton. You could go see Junior Wells. You could see George Harmonica Smith, and if you were lucky, you saw Little Walter, but very few other people in my age group did. But everybody else you could go see, Snooky Pryor, Golden Wheeler, whoever it was, you could probably go see them.
2 questions. Speaking about new technology, because what I did today was take temperature of Little Walter, the alternate take, slow it down,
Right.
and try to write it down the solo for one of my students. And when I start doing it, I remember when I started in 2007 playing harmonica. And I would like to know by you, if for you is more useful to learn the song in this way, or maybe looking for someone who did it for you on YouTube?
Well, I'm not a guy. I think I have to admit, I did learn something from one of Jason's videos about playing like the Lost John lick. I did actually learn that off of one of Jason's videos, and I think even Will Wild, I learned one of his licks off of that, just so I could cut corners and learn it. But I also called up a bunch of people. I called up Paul Lamb in England. I called up Joe Falisco. I called up Sonny Jr., the guy that played with Sonny Terry back in the day. I called up all those guys, and I just picked everybody's brain. And I said, how do you play those licks? How do I learn that rhythm? And that was how I did it. Now somebody like Joe Falisco swears that Sonny Terry did all tongue blocking, and I don't believe it. I think Sonny was more of a lipper and did very little tongue blocking. But when I play Sonny Terry, I do play it tongue blocking like Joe does. So, it's one of those things where it's kind of like, you play it how you play it, and you play it, in your own thing. I mean, the great thing about playing harmonica for a living is that eventually you play it long enough and you do get your own style. You can try to play exactly like Little Walter or exactly like James Cotton. Well, eventually you're going to get your own style, whether you like it or not, because just playing that much is going to bring you into something that is yours. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that there's only so long you can go before you end up creating something that's yours, because it's just, you got all these, ideas in there that are going to eventually make their way out.
This is what I try to teach to my students.
Yeah. And I mean, but here's the thing, is that you have to remember that everybody hears things differently, and everyone kind of can, at least I know for myself, I've reevaluated everything. In other words, I might listen to it back, 50 years ago. When I listened to it, it sounded different than it does today. In other words, I can listen to a Little Walter record and hear all kinds of stuff I didn't hear when I listened to it 50 years ago. That's so just true. The fact. You hear things differently the older you get. You hear them differently. And I know that's true with all musicians. The longer you listen to stuff, the more you hear things that you didn't hear before.
Importantissimo quello che ha appena detto Mark. Più avanti andiamo, più ascoltiamo le cose, con il tempo che passa più riusciamo a capire delle cose diverse. Davide, quante volte abbiamo ascoltato un disco, col passare degli anni abbiamo sentito sempre cose diverse, sempre nuove note che prima non percepivamo, che non capivamo, e che hanno dato un grande contributo al nostro modo di suonare.
Ma guarda, quello che ha detto, poi magari lo
come
traduciamo,
per esempio, appunto.
Sto dicendo Angelo, scusa. Quello che ha detto lui è semplicemente
vai.
È semplicemente una cosa, come definirla, attuale, generazionale, non lo so, però è attuale, cioè il concetto di assimilare informazioni, vedi ad esempio YouTube, che però non è non è la soluzione a tutto. È un po' come facevamo noi una volta che non avevamo YouTube, anche se siamo comunque giovani, non è che siamo anziani, però siamo cresciuti ascoltando i CD, e quindi andando poi CD o dischi o le cassette, si andava indietro a riascoltare, e quindi questo modo di suonare come si dice, diventava per noi prezioso, perché mangiavamo quel linguaggio. Ecco, io dico sempre, noi mangiavamo quel linguaggio di questi armonicisti, diventava parte di quello che ci piaceva e che volevamo suonare. E questa cosa è la cosa principale, che fa la differenza oggi come oggi su quando ad esempio vai fuori a suonare. Ci sono degli armonicisti che vedi che proprio hanno feeling con lo strumento, perché hanno ascoltato tanto quelle canzoni, cioè i dischi venivano ascoltati.
E un'altra cosa
Adesso
molto importante che ha detto Mark per l'appunto è: ascoltavamo i dischi, li rallentavamo, scendevano di 2 ottave, però in realtà la cosa che mi ha colpito di più è il fatto che ascoltando tutte queste cose, ognuno, volente o nolente, crea il suo stile, perché fai una sintesi di tutto quello che
certo,
ascolti.
certo. No, di sicuro, Angelo, non vai mai a copiare,
No,
perché
no.
poi hai così talmente tante, è una cosa scientifica, il cervello assimila così talmente tante cose, ma le assimila, diciamo così, con una forte dose di gusto, di piacere, perché le stai proprio ascoltando, le stai mangiando con le orecchie, questo è il senso, stai nutrendo le orecchie. E quindi questa cosa qua poi va per forza a personalizzare il tuo stile, ma è una cosa che abbiamo sempre detto. Infatti, oggi come oggi, ad esempio, tu che hai allievi, c'è una difficoltà nell'andare a far capire quanto bisogna ascoltare.
Sì, è vero.
In silenzio, cercare di aprire le orecchie e entrare nel pezzo.
Sì. Okay, we are finished our interview, and also we would like to thank you again very much for being here with us. It's a big present for us, very gifted, have the possibility of speaking with a history of harmonica. For us, you are this one. Then the last question is, what do you think about people that now are studying you, because you are one of them in front of you now? That is true.
You know, I don't know. I mean, all I can say is, you know, I'm partial to, you know, the people that I listen to. So, you know, I guess what I always kind of encourage people is to listen to the guys I'm talking about, so you can kind of take the shortcut, you know.
Okay.
In other words, I remember when Eric Clapton was playing Hideaway, I thought, why learn his version when you can learn Freddie King's version?
Right.
And I
Right.
kind of feel the same way about me. I mean, why listen to me if you can listen to Little Walter or James Cotton or Sonny Boy? But, you know, the flip side of that is that if I do have my own style, then find the stuff that's in my style to learn. In other words, I mean, you know, I've done enough recording now. I've got 30 records out. I've got a lot of songs that I've created, and you know, if people want to learn those and find their way around those songs, that's fine. I mean, I realize that you kind of you gravitate to whatever catches your ear.
Yes.
And I know there's people that I listen to that not near as many people listen to. Like, I'm a big fan of a guy like Jim Liban. I think Liban is a great harmonica player, and he's very much in that same bag that I'm into, of listening to the old guys and absorbing them into his own thing. Or somebody like Paul DeLay was just a masterful, you know, technician, and at the same time really came up with something that was totally his own, more than almost any other guy of my generation. I think he was the most original of all of them. But, you know, I mean, I think all the guys of my generation are great harp players. I mean, Kim Wilson and William Clark and Estrin and Rod and Steve Geiger's another guy I think is just a fantastic harmonica player, really up there with everybody. Steve Weston's a great player. There's a ton of guys that I have a lot of respect for as players, but I'd have to say, you know, of the lesser known guys, Paul DeLay and Liban are way up there. And what people need to remember is fame is not about, you know, it to me, fame should be more about what somebody does musically and less about what kind of celebrity they are. And I see a lot of celebrity players, you know, like they're kind of famous because they're on a certain label or they play with a certain band. And I'm not as much of a fan. I got to admit, I mean, I'm even like that about me. It's like the more famous I get, the less I kind of like certain things about it, because, you know, I guess I vote for the underdog. That's the best way of putting it. And I'm like that about players. I mean, even the older black players, it's like, as much as I love Lil Walter, I mean, he's the top, he's the pinnacle. Yeah. But to me, why would you not think that D. Ford Bailey or you know, Rhythm Willie or Jazz Gillum, all those guys were incredible players too. They were just of a different generation.
Yes,
and so,
it is.
you know, I mean, the fact that Lil Walter wouldn't even step on stage with a guy like Rhythm Willie, that speaks volumes about how wicked Rhythm Willie was. You know, I mean, I like guys like Billy Boy Arnold, and Billy Boy he's not as technical a player as a lot of the other guys, but I love the way he phrased, you know.
Yes.
You know, or Lazy Lester. He's another guy I'm good friends with Billy, and I was a really good friend of Lazy Lester. And to me, like, you know, it was the musical uniqueness that those guys had. That's what I love about finding all these other players, is that there's so much, there's so many unique players that are lesser known, but not as celebrated as Lil Walter. And I got to admit, I get real tired of people going, this guy's the best. I don't buy into that, because I think they're all great. And I think that for me, one of the things that makes me unique compared to a lot of players is that I really do and try to incorporate all these guys into my playing. You know, Papa Lightfoot and Jerry McCain and you know, Rhythm Willie and Jazz Gillum. I mean, most players they totally focus only on, you know, I mean, that's my only knock about Rod is really kind of focused really on Lil Walter, George Smith, and Junior Wells. And he's really not interested in a whole lot of other guys.
Yes,
and
it is.
He plays the shit out of Lil Walter. I'll say that. He really plays. When he wants to play Lil Walter, he can really approximate what Walter played. But, you know, that's just how I am. You know, and one of the things I loved about William Clark, you asked me about William Clark. William Clark was a totally unique, individual sounding player. In other words, he had this wicked, big, fat tone. He kind of took some James Cotton, he took some George Smith, he took some Little Walter, and he rolled it into his own kind of style and he merged it with all these great jazz influences like B3 players and horn players, you know, Red Prysock or who's the guy that was married to Ruth Brown? I'm blanking on his name right now.
Lester Young.
Who?
Lester Young, maybe.
No, not Lester Young. The guy that played with all the organ trios, and he was Ruth Brown's husband. And he played with Bill Jennings all the time. I can't think of his name right now.
No, I don't remember.
Great sax player. He was one of the Atlantic Records. I'll think of his name when we get off. But he was a great saxophonist. God, why can't I think of his name? Anyway, I mean, there's so many great players. And the other thing is, I don't listen to just blues. I listen to tons of jazz. I'm always listening to jazz. I'm always listening to, you know, everybody from Jennings to Charlie Parker to, you know, Lester Young, to any of these guys, you know, Gene Ammons, all of them. I listen to everybody, and I really don't limit myself to one thing. And I, you know, I mean, that's what I'm trying to. I guess that's one of the things I'm really trying to say in my when I do my podcasts, what I'm trying to do is include, I mean, I have Bobby Black, who was just a steel player, and he's a 90-year-old steel player, and he's incredible, you know. And I took Anson Funderburg and Bill Stuvey and Wes Starr over to his house, and they were blown away by Bobby Black. You know, they're not country guys. They played country. Wes has certainly played country, but I'm just saying, I really I do want to be inclusive about all the great music that there is out there. I mean, you know, a guy like Bill Kirchen is just a monster guitar player, or, you know, I had Fillmore Slim the other day in one of my interviews, and, you know, he's a really, I try to get stories. That's what I'm trying to do with my podcast. The idea is to get stories, you know, of these different musicians that have been on the road their whole lives and can tell entertaining and interesting stories about all the influences that they've had. You know, the same way you're doing with harmonica players. That's what I'm trying to do with these different musicians on Mark Hummel's Harmonica Party. That's the idea.
And now what you are planning for your future? More tour or just a little grandpa time?
Am I what?
Are you planning to continue touring or just a more?
Oh yeah, no, I'm gonna tour. I'm probably gonna tour till the day I drop. That's just that's always been what I do. I mean, I've been doing it my whole life. So I've been making my living playing the harmonica since 1981. I've been playing since 1970. You know, and you know, I plan to keep doing it as long as I can physically do it. I mean, it's harder, I'll say that. We just got back off the road and we were going for almost a month, and it was like, you know, all of us are like pretty much 70 to 82 in the group. You know, I had Bob Hall playing piano, who's 82 and played with, you know, everybody in England that came over, all the blues guys that came over, he played with them. You know, Anson and me and Wes are all, you know, like right around 70, and Bill Stuvey's 73, you know. So, I mean, you know, we all continue to do it. And it was interesting because when you go on the road and you run into like adversity, you become closer as players. In other words, when you have difficult things that happen, it sort of makes you gel as a band, and it makes you interpersonally more close, you know. Playing in a band is like being in a marriage, except you don't get the sex. You know, instead you get music, which is as good as sex, you know.
Yeah, it's good as,
you know, that's what playing in a band is. And people don't realize that you know, being on the road is not the party that everyone thinks it is. Because I mean, we all stopped drinking.
No, it isn't.
We all stopped drinking years ago. Everybody in my band has stopped drinking for years, and so, you know, and we don't do drugs. You know, we don't even smoke cigarettes. So it's kind of like, you know, what we do is we go out and we play music, and we love playing music, and it's like that's got to be what it's all about, is playing music. Nothing else matters. The celebrity thing is just bullshit. It has so little to do with what it's really about. And the interesting thing is, when you interview all these musicians, they all go right back to the very beginning and talk about what it was like discovering the great music that they've devoted their lives to. You know, nobody talks about, oh man, I played Madison Square Garden, it was the highlight of my life. And they might talk about it, but they don't talk about it for very long compared to what they talk about when they say, oh, I heard this record by Muddy Waters and it changed my life. That's to me what it's about. You know, and the blues guys were like that. They were totally about playing the music. And that was all that mattered, was playing the music, you know, nothing else.
Wonderful answer. Veramente wonderful answer. We are completely amused by this answer, because it's what we think about music go straight to the point, go talking about music and playing and listening. And it is why we do this with Davide.
Right. Why else would you do something that's as difficult as this? I mean, if guys like Eric Clapton are bitching about how difficult it is, imagine what it's like for me and, you know, Wes Starr and Anson Thunderberg, you know.
Yes. Because they get used to be rich.
They get used to being rich and they get used to traveling in luxury. But traveling is traveling. It's all difficult. Even if you're on your own Learjet, you're still having to go through time zones. You're still having to suffer jet lag. You're still having to, you know, not sleep in your own bed. So all that stuff is, you know, it's all difficult. It's just different levels of difficulty. And we're at the bottom rung.
Mark, thank you very much for being here with us. It was a wonderful interview, and for us, it's very important to have the possibility and the ability to speak about music, harmonica live with a history like you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Angelo. And
David, thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right.
Now, if you want to exit from the interview, is okay for us. Now we're going to salute, say hello to our fan, and then go to sleep, because here is 11 in the evening.
You guys are tired. Yeah. All right.
I'll send you the link of the interview on the next days.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much. Good questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Che dire, scusateci, alla fine non siamo riusciti a tradurre tutto perché eravamo rapiti da quello che ci ha detto Mark. C'è una vita veramente in tour dove le difficoltà sono tante, e è stato molto interessante l'ultima risposta di queste domande non previste, Davide. Parliamo in un attimo e poi salutiamo tutti. Che cosa vuol dire andare ancora in tour a 70 anni? Hai visto cosa ha detto? Cioè, quando sei in tour, a parte, vabbè, bellissimo, essere in una band è come essere sposati ma senza il sesso. La risposta è incredibile.
Sì.
Però c'è la musica, più o meno, insomma, risolviamo il discorso.
In realtà si è amanti.
Esatto, è la stessa cosa. E quando sei in tour e succedono le disavventure, quelle serie, quelle grosse, ti avvicini di più o forse ti allontani, dipende un po' da chi hai accanto, dalle persone, con le persone con le quali stai girando il mondo. E soprattutto, arrivati a una certa età, vedi veramente quali sono i valori di fare questa vita. Sentito che ha detto nessuno all'interno della band beve, prende droghe, fuma. A loro gli interessa soltanto di andare in giro a suonare. Quella è l'unica cosa che vogliono fare. Cioè, la cosa più importante è suonare. Non diranno mai di essere stati al Madison Square Garden come altri musicisti. Mi piace che ha parlato male di Eric Clapton. Però, cioè, è veramente questo. Cioè, vabbè.
Il concetto, Angelo, vabbè, forse poi più vai in là con l'età, più in teoria lo capisci, poi non è detto che lo capisci, cioè, forse quando sei più giovane sei un po' più avvezzo a fare le cavolate, ecco.
Sì, poi invece alla fine, dopo anni e anni sulla strada, ti rendi conto di quello che è veramente
della vita che vuoi fare.
Sì.
Ovviamente se vuoi la vita, sì, perlomeno per chi fa questa musica qui, blues e tutto ciò che deriva, che sia anche funky o che sia anche rock. La realtà è che è una vita di chilometri, e ti devi un po' dannare per fare questa vita qua. Quindi un po' l'anima al diavolo la vendiamo tutti un po' per questa cosa. Detto ciò, il concetto poi di professionismo, che alla fine, insomma, se vuoi essere attento e lucido quando suoni, insomma, devi stare un po' attento, diventi un po' un agonista. E quindi, insomma, droghe e alcol sono le cose che non
Bandite.
devi. Beh, certo, anche fumare, ci mancherebbe, anche fumare. Per noi armonicisti fumare è un po' complicato.
Mm.
Però vabbè, io penso sempre che non sono qua a fare il salutista, ognuno fa quello che vuole. Personalmente l'ho capito già molti anni fa, che insomma quel bicchiere di troppo mi dà fastidio perché poi non suono bene. Allora sto attento. Ma anche il cibo, anche quello che vai a mangiare, stare sempre un po' attento, che alla fine fa tutto parte anche di questo lavoro qua dove non ti puoi troppo permettere di sgarrare. Ripeto, non siamo qua a fare i santi, abbiamo
No, non sto
sbagliato
dicendo,
e sbagliamo ogni tanto ancora,
no, più
ma
che
in linea
altro
di
è
massima ci abbiamo
ieri
voglia di suonare. Ecco.
la cosa bella è proprio questa consacrazione della musica. Dici, no, ci interessa andare in giro a suonare. Questo è proprio l'epilogo perfetto per un'intervista bellissima, a parte i soliti problemi di connessione, dove un armonicista che è parte della storia di questo strumento, che continua a contribuire alla storia di questo strumento con dischi nuovi, il suo nuovo disco True Believer, dove ci sono delle cover, dove ci sono anche dei pezzi originali, continua a mettere contributi in questo mondo, sta scrivendo un nuovo libro, sta facendo il podcast dove intervista musicisti di qualsiasi tipo, cioè è una persona estremamente attiva che appunto ha interesse nel portare avanti questo discorso. È uno che noi studiamo, ti racconta principalmente di quello che studiava lui, non accettando
Allora,
minimamente il fatto di essere un armonicista che viene studiato. Adesso lui ha preso il posto di quelli che lui studiava prima.
sì, no, ma guarda che quando le cose le fai bene e le fai con passione e ci credi, e questo è il risultato. Cioè, quello
Sì,
che noi stiamo facendo adesso è portare avanti proprio tutto questo. Ecco, quello che tante volte io dico di tu, Harp, non è perché mi voglio dare o ci vogliamo dare una pacca sulle spalle, ma è un po' quello che sta facendo Mark Hummel, anche lui. Cioè, portare avanti un fattore culturale che non studi da nessuna parte, che non sta scritto da nessuna parte, ma che rimane sicuramente qualcosa di verbale che ci si può passare o a fine concerto come hai fatto tu con Mark Hummel, come ho fatto anch'io
sì,
con altri armonicisti, o guarda
esattamente.
caso, grazie alla tecnologia, anche grazie a questi format che servono proprio a questo, perché poi tutti gli ospiti di Too Much Harp ci raccontano degli aspetti di vita artistica e poi di vita quotidiana molto importanti che ci possiamo riconoscere o riscoprire. Quindi è stata un'intervista tosta questa qua, perché
Molto intensa. Non abbiamo parlato tantissimo di armonica come abbiamo fatto la volta scorsa con Victor, ma abbiamo parlato di quello che è ancora più concreto, cioè la passione per questo mondo e per questo strumento che alimenta tutto, fondamentalmente.
assolutamente sì. No, ma guarda, io sono stracontento perché quando quest'estate tu l'hai incontrata, avete avuto modo di conoscervi, ha capito che c'è passione, una forte passione per quello che ha fatto lui e per quello che è il mondo dell'armonica. Ecco, questa cosa è la cosa principale. Quindi anche quando si va ai concerti tutti quanti noi e trovi gente appassionata come te, è un po' come diceva lui fare l'amore, cioè in realtà che
Sì, no,
ci si scioglie dietro questa parola che si chiama musica,
persona poi
e
di
meno male.
gentilezza rara, persona veramente di gentilezza rara. Davvero incredibile. Bene, Davide, che dire, io sono ancora estasiato da questo momento perché mai avrei pensato nella vita di intervistare uno come Mark Hummel né tantomeno di parlare con lui di armonica e rompergli le scatole chiedendogli come settare l'amplificatore o come se fare le cose in tone blocking o cose varie, che poi è quello che faceva lui con James Scott, e quindi mi sento autorizzato a continuare a farlo.
Allora,
Vi
diciamo una
ricordiamo,
cosa,
no,
Angelo.
volevo un attimo ricordare,
Sì,
scusami se ti interrompo un attimo, volevo ricordare appunto a tutti che potete continuare a seguirci e a invitare i vostri amici a farlo su YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, potete scriverci potete scriverci una mail a tumacharp@gmail.com dandoci degli spunti di riflessione, suggerendoci armonicisti da intervistare, suggerendoci delle domande. Insomma, noi ci occupiamo di questo, quindi scriveteci il più possibile per darci delle nuove idee, dei nuovi spunti di riflessione. Prego Davide.
Sì, stavo dicendo, ringraziamo tutti quelli che ci seguono, abbiamo visto qualcuno che ha interagito mandando dei saluti e quindi vi salutiamo, vi abbracciamo tutti e anzi, siccome ci vedremo a gennaio, vi facciamo gli auguri di buon Natale e di buon 2025, un 2025 che non spoileriamo niente, ma ci sono delle sorprese che arriveranno già a gennaio,
che i
alcune
fuochi
notizie.
d'artificio, esatto, diciamo che i fuochi d'artificio li cominciamo a fare da dopo il 1° di gennaio,
Sì.
ma quelli
Dal
veri.
15
Da
15 di
cominciamo a fare-
gennaio. Già,
esatto,
una data è
cominciamo a fare i fuochi
sicura,
d'artificio,
il
quelli veri,
15.
esatto. E dire di nuovo grazie a tutti, concludiamo 1 ora e mezza di live, non l'avevamo fatto mai, davvero grazie
No.
a tutti, soprattutto Mark Hummel che è stato con noi, e ci rivediamo a gennaio per la nuova puntata delle Too Much Harp Interview. Saluti a tutti.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.